Hello and welcome. Today I'm going to be talking a little bit about my final project where I specifically tried to focus on the battle tactics that were employed during the Battle of Cowpens and how they changed the trajectory of the Revolutionary War. In my research for the research project proposal, I've had to go through and analyze some of the tactical advantages the American Army had, specifically the geography, the location, some of the small hills that Morgan thought that his men would be able to hide behind, specifically to be able to surprise the British Army. And then there is also an open plain to face Tarleton's troops head on. Weather was also another consideration as well that day, where it was supposedly humid even in South Carolina during the month of January, which is pretty interesting. And the number of soldiers, to take a look at that, we also can take a look at pension records of some of the veterans who had served in the war that we can see in Babbitt's book, Devil of a Whipping. And then specific commands and lines up of soldiers, including just General Morgan and how he had his men line up on the battlefield, and then they fought from a defensive format. To have a better understanding of what happened at Cowpens and the military, we have to look at the assigned military positions and the regiments. Brigadier General Morgan oversaw the vast majority of the men who were serving in Cowpens that day. And, under his command, he had General Pinkins, who had overseen the militia. He had Lieutenant Colonel Howard, who oversaw the Continentals, and then his cavalry officer, William Washington, would oversee the light infantry and the cavalry. There was really no reason for the Americans not to have won this battle. The battle had been going pretty well up until a slight miscommunication, but up until that point, the American army was operating from a defensive standpoint, using surprise tactics like having William Washington's men hide behind a small hill to later come up behind Tarleton's men and surprise them from behind and attack them. Morgan was also a veteran who had years of experience, a lot longer than the 26-year-old British officer Tarleton had had, of course. And Morgan's men were also well rested and had food the night before and had prepared for the battle, versus Tarleton's men who had marched through the night to catch up to Morgan's men to try to attack them in the evening. However, obviously that didn't happen since the battle took place very early that morning. The confusion that happened during the battle was because of the noise. Scottish loyalists were loudly chanting clan and war songs. Again, just the noise of the battle, people screaming, horses whinnying, guns going off, swords slashing. You get the picture. Howard's troops misheard his commands to meet the British flank attack, but instead had heard to turn back instead. And this appeared like a retreat and an assured victory to Tarleton, so he had ordered his troops to charge forward and attack the returning American soldiers. Morgan would later command the Continental soldiers to reload and turn back to fire at Tarleton's men. This would surprise them and shoot many of them down, similar to dominoes falling. I just want to share some quick and closing thoughts on Cowpens. And of course, there's going to be much more discussed in the actual paper that I'm going to finish writing up before the weekend. But from an assured victory to one that could have easily gone wrong at the last minute, Morgan had set himself and his troops up for success early on in the initial planning stages of the Battle of Cowpens. It really was just that fluke moment of miscommunication where things could have gone wrong really easily. But thankfully, because of Morgan's experience in battle and years of military experience, we do see that he was able to turn things around at the last minute with the support of his military. Thank you again for taking the time to watch my videos this semester. I hope that each video has been something to learn from, and I've enjoyed having this class with you all. Have a great day.